Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Just Mets podcast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. I'm Andrew. He's Rich. Well, damn. What a week of Mets baseball we all just endured, witnessed, had to go through. And before we get into the run of show and through what we're going to just kind of vent through on this episode, I just want to start here because we're all feeling feels at the moment. We're all feeling things. And I pride myself on being the marathon, not a sprint guy. And I come from the basketball world, as I've said probably too many times. That's a drinking game at this point. But covering the Knicks this season, I mean, anybody who's followed my content knows I haven't once really wavered on their championship equity, their losses really changing my opinion of the team. High ceiling, low floor, but I still think this team absolutely can make the finals, right? And I've watched as some crash outs may have occurred and some judgments after small sample sizes have been made. And I've said, hey, everybody's allowed to believe what they believe. Marathon, not a sprint. And as the Knicks are about to finish a 53-win season and head to the postseason, I still feel the same way I did at the beginning, which then makes me, as now a baseball content creator and just how I've always evaluated baseball as a fan, it makes it very tough to be the only April guy and check back in on Memorial Day when you witness what you witnessed the past week, because there's more than just they'll get better. The weather will get warmer. Guys that are in slumps won't be in slumps all season. This week had some fundamental foundational struggles that I have to acknowledge are gonna have to change, whether it be small stuff like Carson Bench gets sent down, they pull the plug on seeing what they have left in Mark Vientos, or some rather large changes like a manager change. If this gets that ugly that quick, that even I have to acknowledge, the guy that preaches patience, they don't have the patience of this fan base, and I don't know how much they're going to have the patience of this owner. So, Rich, I'm going to hand it over to you. We're doing a bit of a different format than the week in review. What's your takeaway? And we'll get to our El Stinko, and somehow we'll find some curtain calls from this past week. But Rich, the Mets went 1-5 this week. I was lucky enough to be there for the one and are 7-9 after a 5-game losing streak. How are you feeling?
Andrew, I went to a rage room on Saturday for the first time. I don't know if anybody knows what these are. I've never done it before.
They're very fun. Yes.
You basically pay money to go into a room and break a bunch of stuff for a small amount of time, like 20, 30 minutes. Funny enough, I had nothing to do with the Mets, but after this week of baseball, I might need to go back just to get it out of my system and break some more stuff. Yeah, I mean, this week started with a fun walk-off win, and then the fun stopped, and now we're looking at 5 losses in a row. A lot of agita for this early in the season, and I mean, it sucks. It's not fun. I don't know that I'm panicking over the season, but I'm frustrated over how it's been to watch. And I think a big theme is what you have been bringing up a few times now on the podcast recently of it's worse because of the stink of last year. And it just feels like this extension of bad, uninspired baseball that is weighing on people more than I think a normal start of the season would, because it's not just 16 games. It's these 16 games plus the last 4 months of last year on top of it. There's a lot of extra weight right now, and it's not fun to watch. I did not have fun watching baseball this week.
I mean, it's funny. If you told me when I got home Tuesday night, and that was just a fun game to go to, they came back and won in the 8th inning, not the 9th inning, as we are as a group and as a collective, making sure people understand the streak that the Mets have not broken is that when they're trailing after 8, they have not come back
People
just yet.
still don't seem to get that one. Trailing after 8, as defined by Major League Baseball, literally just means trailing in the ninth inning. If you are
Right.
tied in the ninth and you come back in extra innings, doesn't count against that stat because the Mets obviously won a game like that this year. They also won a game like that last year against the Phillies in April. So please stop yelling at me on Twitter. It is correct. You might not like that MLB phrases it that way, but that is officially, if you go into like the game logs and the stats that they send out before every single game and the press releases and stuff, that's how it's written.
Well, they've got 2 wins this year when trailing after 7, which I don't know what that means, but I've enjoyed at least both of those, and they happen in back-to-back games, right?
Yeah.
If you told me Tuesday night that the floor would just kind of open on both them and the team across town, the state of New York baseball at the moment, 0-10 in the last 5 days, as well as like this following a pretty epic 8th inning comeback from both teams on Tuesday night. Misery loves company, apparently, in this New York family. It's what's made this so disheartening. And look, the format we're gonna follow today, and I texted you last night. I feel like this is just gonna be a venting sesh because the list of negatives is just so overwhelming that trying to put anything into context is a fool's errand. Like, I think you just kind of go through what are the list of most annoying things that we're feeling right now, and we say this is something I'm worried about long term, or this is just an April thing that we're gonna have to deal with for April. So I'm just gonna start at the top with what I think is the most troubling thing and the thing I'm most worried about long term because it feels different. And that's Francisco Lindor's struggles to start the year. There is something very different about his April slump this year. And I'm calling it his April slump. We've gotten used to the idea that he gets off to slow starts. I expected. I think we both kind of thought the April slump is almost a guarantee because of the hamate bone injury and a lack of spring training. But the losing plays he's now making, the struggles in the field, the struggles on the base pass that he's making, and
everything.
It's everything. And you add in the 0 RBIs through 16 games. RBIs aren't the most telling stat. 0 RBIs is a loud stat, though. And the thing, if you were a Lindor defender over the years, that you always used to be able to rely on was that he still makes all the winning plays that you don't see, that don't show up, that aren't as loud in the box score. And now those are disappearing. And you have to bring up that he's going to be in his mid 30s pretty soon. And he's on the other side of 30. And unfortunately, you just kind of have to look at where he is in his career and start to worry a little bit that if those are gone, then what is this player? And it's the thing I'm most worried about. I do think he'll eventually hit at some point this year, but can I still count on the overall positive play from an everyday player that I'm getting? How much does Lindor worry you, Rich?
I still think that by the end of the year, he's going to have a Francisco Lindor kind of season. But I won't lie and say like this isn't alarming, and it's for all the reasons that you said. Like I expect every year that he's going to get off to a bad start. It's like Mark Teixeira, again bringing up Yankees. Like every year, it's just certain guys like get off to really bad starts. It's just like for whatever reason, it's part of it. So that doesn't surprise me. But yeah, these like lack of concentration. Like it seems like his head is not in the game right now, which is just so unlike him. I mean, last week when they played the Cardinals, forgets how many outs there were. This week, he doesn't cover second base at one point against the A's on what could have been a double play. He gets picked off from third base as the tying run in a big situation. He gets thrown out stealing on Sunday, not to mention the fact that he's still not really hitting. He hit a little bit more on this homestand, but no power, not driving in any runs, comes up empty every time with runners on base. So you combine all of those things, and it's just like, what's what's going on here? Obviously, people are trying to poke holes in Lindor as a leader after what happened last year, and I don't know. I don't have an answer for it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how worried I am long term, but this is as bad of a start as any player could really get off to the point where we're asking the question, which I don't think we would have asked if this was just a normal bad Lindor start.
Everything's on the table. Like the personal stuff, I don't even pay attention to. Like I don't. That analysis does not matter to me. But the baseball stuff that now has gone past the like, he's not hitting. You know, like I'm at a loss for words for
Mm-hmm.
what is supposed to be one of your sure things on this team, and he's been anything but a sure thing. To borrow Gary Cohen's old phrase, he's been a net negative to start the
Yeah.
season. And I like him as a person personally, and I think he's done a lot of great things as a Met. And the 2024 run was largely on the back of him becoming an MVP candidate for 4 months. And
Yep.
the boos are getting louder at Citi Field, and I don't even blame a frustrated fan base that witnessed one victory this week. So, yeah, well I might want to just make the note now. Steve Cohen,
Okay.
shut up. Like, don't mention. I don't need to read. Like, how many people only showed up in my ballpark yesterday? Yeah, you're lucky. You're lucky that percentage showed up. And thank you for giving away free tickets. Thank you for moving up to 4 p.m. during a work day, middle of the week. Like, thank you for that. I
Do you want a
unfortunately the
fucking
product on the
award?
field, right? Like the product on the field is going to dictate what your attendance is. Unfortunately, so
and again, after last
yeah,
year, like, I don't want to fucking hear about it. Like, I just like, it's the
it's
only
tone
thing
deaf.
he's really
It's very
said.
tone deaf. Yeah,
And I get it. Like, it was Evan Roberts. Like, I don't want him to yell at me again, but but he defended it a little bit on his show this week, saying like, well, like, it was more about people claimed the free tickets and the people who claimed them didn't show up. And like, I do get that too at a point. I also just don't want to hear it. Like, last year happened and there was the complaining about fans from 2024, and then everything played out last year and the team played like crap and they blew a playoff spot. I don't want to hear complaints about people not showing up to the ballpark 2 weeks into this season when everything you just said and how last year ended. Like, yeah, it's 4 p.m. It's 40 degrees. You changed the start time like the day before, and it's a weekday. Not that many people are going to show up, even if they claimed the tickets. Like, they might have claimed the tickets and then realized they couldn't go, or was like, it's not worth it because it's freezing and it's Tuesday and this and that and the other thing. And it just like, it makes you seem like an out of touch owner, which generally speaking, I don't think he has been, but he has had these moments where it feels like it's that whole like billionaire class can't relate to like regular people kind of thing.
yeah. Look, I don't know if I mentioned this part at all yet. I was one of the people that claimed the free ticket on Tuesday. My wife was even like, "Oh, they moved the game up." Shout out to Mrs. Claudio, was like, "You know what? Let's splurge." And I ended up going by myself, but like we upgraded my ticket so I could sit field level because of, like, as a thank you to the Mets for doing that favor for us. So I was even one of the Mets fans that tried to pay it forward, or at least pay it back to the organization. You want to see what this crowd looks like if this team keeps losing, Steve, and then you'll have something to really complain about. Okay.
Yeah.
The next most annoying thing. I mean, Rich, we got to go to Vientos, in my opinion, because after last week, how we sung the praises on the weekly recap, for him to follow that up with an 0 for 17 and almost every at bat felt like it was an important at bat.
Dude, it's so funny, like, not
yeah.
funny, but darkly funny that every show we put out like 2 to 3 social clips that you guys see on like Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. And the first one that we put out from last week's show was talking about, well, if Mark Vientos is going to hit like it's 2024, then they don't really need Pete Alonso. And since that clip went out, he went, 0 for the week, which is just very funny. Also, the other clip we put out was about Clay Holmes being the ace of the team, and then he got hurt.
Yeah.
Apparently, he should be okay, but I don't know if we jinxed it or what's going on. But yeah, I mean, we started buying back into the Vientos stock probably too quick, and he rewarded us with a week where he got 0 hits. Didn't really come close to delivering at any point, and we're once again back in that situation where, and I don't want to step on one of the other things we have on the list, but doesn't it kind of feel like any time the Mets ever expect anything out of Vientos or Beatty, they don't perform? Like, it's only when you don't think that they're going to do something, that's when these guys hit. And I don't know. I think we're kind of in a situation with both of those players for me where I'm like, I don't really trust either of these guys. And I think they might have just like maybe whiffed on these young third baseman turned utility infielders at this point.
So that informs, I mean, we could add Brett Beatty to this. Brett Beatty hasn't drawn a walk yet this year. It was a 3-2 pitch that was millimeters
he almost did.
away from drawing his first walk of the season. He has a higher batting average than on base, which I got to be honest, didn't know you could do that. And that's just apparently what happens when you have no walks to this point in the season.
It's sack flies. If you get a sack
that's
fly,
how it is. He has 2 sack flies.
You have no
season.
Walks. It can you can
Rich,
drop your on base, but not your batting average.
I'm going to add one thing to the Beatty conversation because he's off to a dreadful start to his season, both offensively and defensively. The defensively part, I don't have as much smoke for him. We watched Lucas Duda play right field for a season, and we're like, yeah, you're not an outfielder. We watched a no-hitter with Lucas Duda in right field for 9 innings.
I'll never believe that really happened. It's incredible. He played the entire 9 innings.
Putting a corner infielder, or maybe at this point a second baseman or a utility infielder like Beatty out in the outfield. The play in right field was a tough play to make. I thought he played it poorly, probably because he's never played right field consistently before. So that, of course, is expected. He's going to then have to make up for it with his bat. And my smoke for Brett Beatty is less because I think his best position is third base, and they signed somebody to play his best position, right? So that's why I'm less frustrated with Beatty. And the long term, he's going to have to hit, but my long-term thoughts with Brett Beatty, and I'll let you respond in a second, is just like eventually he's going to have to hit to be a consistent everyday part of the conversation. The Vientos thing, look, someone replied to my, again, Twitter, the place we do all of our conversing, why he pinch hit for Jarrett Young in the 8th inning today or the 7th inning today, whichever at bat it was where Young the Jared Young 3-hole spot came up with 1st and 3rd and 2 outs. And a lefty was on. They brought in a lefty to face him, and Vientos got sent up. And my thought is, because there was some pushback to why put Vientos up there after an 0 for 15 week at the time, I actually think April's the time to find out what you have with Mark Vientos. Find out now if those are the spots you can count on him in. Find out now if he is kind of running out of time here, so you could make a significant change or a decision on him before the end of May, right? Like give him at bats, find out what you have in this young player. Was a postseason hero 2 years ago. We're at the point where you need to find out how much you want to consider his future to be a part of your future. And it's why I'm okay with giving him the at-bats now. But man, is the entire script the exact opposite from a week ago, where we thought maybe, hey, the bounce back is here. And now we're just back to how much can you actually depend on this player as a consistent part of your everyday plan?
It's back to where we came into this season with Vientos, and not to speak for you, but definitely where I was at of like, I don't trust anything out of this guy.
Well, hold on. Let me jump in. If you remember when you said the infamous clip of you're done, right? Yeah. I was like, against lefties, sure, why not? So that's why that spot in particular in the 7th inning was supposed to be a Mark Vientos spot,
I have no issue with the decision to pinch hit with him just based on like who they had available. It seemed like They didn't really have any intention of using Alvarez at any point in this game to hit. It was like really like the one guy, or one of the only guys who did hit. We didn't see Luis Robert pinch hit in that spot either. So maybe it was like a full day off for both of those two players. Based on that, I don't want Jared Young in a high leverage spot against a lefty there either. Again, not to get ahead of ourselves, but I think the bigger issue is the fact that you have to pinch hit for your number 3 hitter in a 1-0 game. That's probably a problem. If you have to do that, you probably shouldn't be hitting third. But yeah, I mean, I'm just at the point where, look, and I started buying into it a little too much. Maybe we've been a little overly reactionary, both like positively and negatively so far this year, because we're just operating off of these very small sample sizes, and we want 2024 Vientos to come back. I just don't know that player exists. I really just think it was probably a flash in the pan, and I just don't think we're gonna see that again. I'm not saying you just like get rid of him, you give him away for nothing, because of course you're afraid that he figures it out with Pittsburgh or some random team, and all of a sudden he's hitting 25, 30 home runs again, and Swaggy V becomes a thing somewhere else. But I don't know. If you have the expectations that this team has, you have to win. Like, can you really rely on a player like that to play a somewhat important role? I don't think that you can.
Especially, look, somewhat important is a fascinating way to phrase it, because, like, I went into the season thinking he was the Marte, like he's going to DH against lefties, right? And if he's hitting, great,
Right.
play him a bunch. Last week, look, the way he hit for 3 days in San Francisco, the thought was, well, if he's 80% of this, then, or even 50% of this, that's a guy that can play every day, whether it be first base or DH, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then he was 0% of that for a week, and we're back to, you have to pick your spots when to use him. So, look, the full season Mark Vientos sample so far, the 2-week sample, or 16 game to be specific, of Mark Vientos is like a very streaky player, and the bad was so much worse than the good, unfortunately. So,
and maybe the Giants just really suck.
that may also be a case.
Like, the Giants might just be really bad with
Do
their
they have the worst
college
record in
manager.
baseball right now?
I can look it up real quick.
Okay, I'll move on to the next topic, because, look, we've gone through so real quick, do you have any thoughts on Brett Beatty too? I know I'll look up the Giants record if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really been a big Brett Beatty believer either. I did think he might be decent this year. I don't know if our buddy Kevin's in the chat right now, but number one Brett Beatty fan. But again, it just seems like every time they've relied on Brett Beatty to be good, he doesn't do anything. And I remember a few years ago when he was a rookie and he had come up, there was a weird quote that he had where basically said like he doesn't really do much prep work, and like doesn't really go up there with a plan, and doesn't make adjustments in game at the plate. And I remember thinking like, that's weird, and probably not something you should admit and something you should grow from. And then listening to the broadcast on Sunday, Steve Gelbs does one of his hits on the field, and he's talking about when Brett Beatty feels locked in, he doesn't go up to the plate with a plan. And I was like, wait, is he still doing that? Like all these years later? And that might just be like a small thing like that I'm latching on to, but I don't know, man. Like, it just feels weird. And sometimes I'm just not sure that like Brett Beatty's like a big market kind of guy. He didn't go to like he played down south. He went to Oklahoma State. If I might be butchering that. I think I might be confusing him with Benj. But Beatty's, not like a big city Northeast kind of guy. And when he says stuff like that, he performs not well whenever there are any sort of expectations set on his shoulders. I don't know. It makes me think and wonder, is he the kind of player that's really going to succeed here? And it's been very up and down, and really has had like 2 to 3 decent to good months at the major league level in all the opportunities he's gotten. So he has less of a track record of success in the big leagues than Mark Vientos, and I don't really believe in Vientos. So, and I'm talking purely about Beatty as a hitter. He is a good defender. There's value there, but I just don't know if he's ever going to be the bat that we thought he was going to be when they drafted him and he was coming up through the minor leagues.
So two things. One, the Giants are tied for the most losses in baseball with 10, with, of course, the Chicago White Sox. And Brett Beatty, I'm surprised you didn't recall this, very famously grew up in Texas and went to the same high school, I believe, as New York Jets wide receiver Garrett Wilson, which is why they like wear each other's jerseys, or jersey swap whenever they possibly can. I think the biggest takeaway, and this can lead into the fourth most annoying thing that I think a lot of Mets fans are feeling. The biggest thing Brett Beatty is not is an outfielder. And I got to be honest, the utility plan for Beatty, I saw it as like, all right, let's see how this works. I was never fully co-signing it. But the darkest thought I had this weekend, Rich, the Mets could probably use right now with no Juan Soto and Luis Robert needing to play only certain days and Carson Bench struggling the way he is, and maybe you need a utility guy that can play second and outfield. Probably going to use Jeff McNeil this weekend. It's the darkest thought I had watching Jeff McNeil play a solid second base and do all his, slap hitting all over the Citi Field outfield this weekend.
500.
Yeah, like he's hitting 318 to start the season in Sacramento, and has just found a role in a very elite offense where he just has to hit seventh and do his part, play solid defense, maybe play multiple positions. The starts that, and this can be 2 in 1, actually. The starts that Jeff McNeil and Brett Beatty, Freudian slip, Jeff McNeil and Brandon Nimmo have gotten off to. Brandon Nimmo hitting 2 home runs in Texas, for Texas in LA last night. And then you compile it with the starts that both Carson Bench and Mark Semien have gotten off to, both hitting under 200, but playing stellar defense. Outstanding catch in the 5th inning today from Carson Bench. Unfortunately, that and his opening day home run are the only productive things he's done in a major league uniform. And that's like 2 in 1. Like the starts that these 2 guys that were supposed to be important parts of the everyday roster have gotten off to, in Semien and Bench. And then the starts that 2 guys that were looked at as part of the problem last year that were largely swapped out for these 2 in Nimmo and McNeil. How are you processing all of that, Rich?
Honestly, and I think I'll differ with some fans here. I don't really care. Nimmo is a like very hot and cold kind of hitter. We've seen this before. He looks kind of like a all-star MVP level player for a couple of weeks, and then he'll go like 1 for 28 with 15 strikeouts. So I don't think Brandon Nimmo has all of a sudden become like a completely different kind of hitter. I think he's just gotten off to a great start. I think McNeil will be solid for the A's, but I do think that it was time for a change, specifically with him. Obviously, they did kind of have to give him away for pretty much nothing. So you can make an argument there. Was it worth it? But, if we were really focusing on the clubhouse stuff, which people really seemed to care about last year, like McNeil seemed like a bit like a malcontent at times over the years. And obviously we know his history with Lindor, which he was asked about when he came back to Citi Field the other night.
Nice hug on the field before the game. Real quick, nice hug between the 2 of them on the field. It looked like a very much, long time no see. Glad we're not coworkers anymore. One of those type of hugs before the game.
Yeah. So it doesn't really bother me. I just think the bigger issue is just the guys who replaced them so far are not performing. And look up at this entire lineup that nobody's performing. If you look at the OPSs for the players on the team who started today's game, the Sunday finale,
go through them.
Well, first of all, only one player had an OPS that started with a 7 who played today, and it was Mark Vientos, and it dipped below that, I think, by the time the game ended.
You said started today, right?
Oh, excuse me. Jared Young came out of the game, and
Put some
Vientos came off the
respect on
bench,
Jared Young's name,
excuse
sir.
me. So let's go through the OPSs for the players who started the Sunday finale against the A's. Lindor 530 or 573, Polanco 565, Jared Young 841, Bo Bichette 593, Brett Beatty 549, Marcus Semien 526, Carson Bench 427, Luis Torrens 579, and Tyrone Taylor 671. So Tyrone Taylor has the second best OPS of the 9 players who started on Sunday.
Yeah.
You can't win baseball games like that. That is a huge problem. That, to me, is a far bigger issue than Jeff McNeil and Brandon Nimmo are off to good starts. Pete Alonso's off to a really shitty start. Does that make anybody feel better? Probably not.
Well, that's the thing I was going to go to is like, look, these are two annoying things, right? I'll put them both in vacuums real quick. The Jeff McNeil and Brandon Nimmo starts don't really new rats on an old ship. That's very funny. I'm not reading that name.
Biscuits Chooch.
As Rich goes ahead and reads it. The It's Only April does apply, in my opinion, to the Jeff McNeil and Brandon Nimmo starts. Brandon Nimmo's had 2 good weeks several times for the Mets. The hope with moving him out was that you get a guy that can help you defensively and not be so bad offensively, and what you were counting on with Semien, that in the aggregate, you're getting a more valuable player. And Marcus Semien's defense has been as advertised. He's been outstanding outside of one pop-up in San Francisco in the field. The McNeil start again. It was a dark thought I had this weekend that it's like, you could probably use a guy that can play the outfield right now with your best player being out, and he's an outfielder, and you're forced to put Brett Beatty in right field in important spots, right? So, not as concerned long term about losing those 2 guys. And to your point, Rich, this start has been frustrating. How significantly more frustrating it would be if they ran it back. You would have you just ran it back. Like, you didn't change anything, and you're getting the same result. If they were 7-9 to start the year and all these guys got off to slow starts, you'd be like, well, look what happened last year. You made no significant change. So I'm not as frustrated by the guys that are out doing poorly, especially if Pete would have stayed. Like, they gave Pete the contract and he got off to this start. If they brought back our boy Edwin Diaz and his velocity was down, he was blowing through on leads and his ERA was 6, we would have these conversations right here on this pod about, did they make a mistake, even if it is a 2-3 week sample. Having said that, I am long-term concerned about Marcus Semien, and long-ish / short-term with Carson Bench. It was good to see him have some singles the last couple days. This was a thing I talked about during spring training, though. The power just wasn't there. And then he homered on opening day, and I was like, all right, maybe that's a sign of things to come. But as James Buckley puts in the chat, like, Bench needs to be in AAA. I think you give him at bats for now, see what you have. Like, unfortunately for him, let this get as bad as it possibly can be and see if he can bust out of it.
What's your line of demarcation for Benj? Is it May 1st?
May 1st can be it. Soto coming back can be it. Like, it's just a swap. You bring Soto in, you send Benj down. Look, this was a fear we had on opening day. Like, one of our fears coming into the season. I want Benj to make the team and stay with the team. He might have to take a different career path. Now, look, if they're about to go into a weirdly bad season, like, and a weirdly bad, I mean, like, with the expectations that they have, they can't just see if Benj can figure it out or just have a bad rookie year and give him the at-bats. There are expectations on this year.
There's jobs on the line.
So that'll inform a conversation we're about to have. He's going to have to start showing major league results. There is also a world where he just goes down to AAA, has 2 good months there, works out some of the kinks that he saw in the majors, and then comes back, to a team that might need him to, like, the example I always have is Michael Conforto. He has the run to the World Series, then has a good first couple weeks in the majors in 2016, eventually gets sent down because of how bad his slump became. And there was never really part of the major league plan going forward, right? I think
not that year.
At least not that year. That year, yeah. 2018, 2017, he was an all-star and then was just part of the everyday plan going forward, right? I think with Benj, May 1st, or like if it's this bad where he's just like a single here and a bloop there and he's just a defensive replacement, like him going down when Soto comes back, I think is a tenable option. The thing that does make this tough is that doesn't really replace him in the outfield, which is where Tommy Pham might also come into play here. That ironically, Tommy Pham's going to end up being part of the major league roster pretty soon. And maybe the current Mets work hard enough that he'll play with, right? So listen, this could be like the transition into the next thing, Rich, because I have nothing to say about Marcus Semien other than you got to be better than this, right? Like you got to be better than
Please don't be cooked because there's 2.5 years left on that contract.
It's that simple. The defense has been as advertised. You have to hit better than 180. You have to get more than one hit in a homestand. How's that?
Right.
Not seeing Juan Soto for 2 weeks or a week and a half. It's felt like 2 weeks. It's felt like 100 years. Yeah, I hate watching the Mets without Juan Soto, just plain and simple. And you want to talk about most annoying things? It's easily for me the most annoying thing that I'm least concerned about, if that makes sense. Like, I think he'll be back in a week or two. And it was smart to put him on the IL now and not force him to play at this point in the season. It's everybody whose job on the line's get out of jail free card. That's like, hey, I don't have Juan Soto. What are you going to get mad at me for? This is why we're not hitting. We're missing one of the best hitters in baseball.
I do think, though, if I can be a little devil's advocate with that,
please.
Like, yes, we're talking about one of the best hitters in all of baseball, MVP candidate in most seasons. Obviously, there's going to be a large impact on losing that kind of player. That being said, there are 8 other guys in the lineup, and this is not basketball, and this is not football with a quarterback. There are far deeper issues with this offense right now that one player, as great as he is, cannot just magically solve on his own. And having Juan Soto back obviously helps things. It changes the format of the lineup entirely, of course, but it doesn't make Lindor and Bichette and Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos and every single player on this roster who's not named Luis Robert suddenly have an OPS that doesn't start with a 5. So it obviously matters, but I do think that it's like, I don't want it to be used as a catch-all excuse of like, well, if they just had him back, they would be hitting, because they weren't really hitting the first week plus of the season with him either. And that was with him getting on base every other at bat, it seemed like.
Right. I don't think I was saying like they would be. I'm just saying if I'm the manager and I'm like, yeah, our offense looks terrible, I'm missing one of the best hitters in baseball, I would use that as my defense. I agree with you that one hitter does not make a 9-man lineup. Listen, if Juan Soto were hitting and 8 guys weren't, we would be pretty frustrated at this point in the season. I do think they'd probably be 9-7 or 8-8. Like, we wouldn't be talking about a losing streak at this point. I miss Juan Soto is like the whole point of this complaint. Hopefully we see him soon. I don't think he was playing catch in the outfield at this point. If Polanco is like just a DH, I think we're going to get to the point where you IL Polanco and just say, Soto, you're my DH for a little bit, but only if he's ready to do so. And that doesn't change the fact that other guys are going to have to start hitting at some point. The things I haven't said yet, I guess now is so, okay. No Soto and Jared Young hitting third twice. And it figures they scored 0 runs in the 2 games that Jared Young hit third. He's one of their best hitters, so I don't actually disagree with putting a guy with he's hitting 350 with an OPS. He's gotten a hit in just about every game he's played. Like Friday was the only time he hasn't gotten a hit. It
It's just a
is like
sad state of affairs.
it's a microcosm. Like, you know how bad the Mets offense is? Jared Young's hitting third. The things we haven't said yet, Rich, are the Beatty Senga, what do we have here thing. And I think it's easily the most troubling thing for me for the rest of the season.
And Senga,
Peterson and Senga. These are guys in their last year with the Mets. Peterson's now had 2 stinkers. What Senga was on Saturday just was a holdover, like not giving your team a chance to win, non-competitive, as Mendy likes to call it. That's
2 blow-up starts.
2/5 of your rotation that just it gives your team no chance to win games. Like the offense got back into it. Imagine if you got 6 innings and 1 run from Senga, or even just a quality start. You're talking about at least it's a rubber match on Sunday. Yeah, that's the most alarming thing for me, and it's on brand that I'm always going to point to your pitching. It's the first indication of how much longer you guys in the rotation for me, Rich.
Yeah, and again, it's like you said it. It's not just like, oh, he didn't have it, he wasn't great, like Freddie Peralta's first start of the year, right? Where he's like, 5 innings, 4 runs, like, meh. This was 2 games that your starting pitcher lost for you pretty much right away. This past week alone, obviously, Peterson had the other one in San Francisco the week before that pretty much instantly took them out of that game too. And that also feels a lot like last year. And the first few weeks, like other than that one Peterson start, we really hadn't seen this at all. Like there were no blow-up starts. Everybody was giving the Mets a chance to win games at worst, if not better than that. And then, to see Peterson again get blown up, it seems like he might not be on the same page with the Mets pitching plan for him either, which is interesting, just the way he's like utilizing his pitches and what pitches are being called. It seems like he has a little bit of a different philosophy maybe than the pitching coach does. And Senga is just this like tantalizing forever kind of what if, he's kind of an enigma on this team where you just never know what he's going to do. And the ceiling is so high, but the floor is also so low. And so it's very discouraging to see him just get like obliterated on Saturday wearing our favorite Purple People Eater jerseys. And
that stands for the 7 line, by the way, the 7 line logo, Rich. I don't know if you knew that, but the 7 line logo is purple.
Yeah, I just learned something.
There you go. Here all week.
Yeah. Yeah, man, like it was alarming. And again, like I get that they scored 6 runs. They actually somehow wound up making that game on Saturday a 1-run game at one point before things went awry again. But you essentially in the second, third inning of that game where it's like, well, this game's over, and that's not a good situation to be in. And it just makes you wonder, well, what actually is the back part of this rotation? I think we all feel pretty good about Peralta, McLean, and Holmes at this point, but like, what are they getting out of these 2 guys? Those are the 2 biggest question marks probably with the pitching coming into the year, and they still are as put on display this past week.
So a couple things. First of all, James Buckley with another one. Senga needs to pitch to Torrens only. His ERA is 2+ runs lower with Torrens. I mean, I'm fine if you want to use that as a sample. Which game was it that Alvarez DH'd and Torrens caught?
Friday, I think.
So it was not for Holmes. Look, this can actually lead to the next thing, James. The next most annoying thing that was part of the Mets 7-9 start. So about run prevention for a little bit. The run prevention movement, not preventing runs. I know that the dorks are out and saying like, technically the Mets have one of the best rankings in defensive runs saved. And that's all great. Like they're up the middle. They've been outstanding. As I mentioned, Marcus Semien. I actually think outside of the play at the plate, the Vientos throw home, which gave all of us 2015 and Pete Alonso flashbacks, right? I actually think Mark Vientos has played a decent first base so far this season. Maybe that's his spot. He's going to have to hit regardless. It doesn't feel like the run prevention movement has led to any, like in some big spots, the Beatty misplay of right field, the catching situation where, and this is really just a conundrum that they have, that Alvarez has gotten off to this great start offensively. He's been your really only power threat in the lineup, and he's just been a horrific catcher to start his season. So you like, is he a future DH? You have to play? I don't think he's tall enough to play first base at this point. Like, what do you have in Francisco Alvarez? We saw what Luis Torrens was last year. He was the second best defensive catcher in baseball. Is not an everyday catcher, unfortunately. You can't have that bat in the lineup, with the caveat that you could if you had such a potent lineup that it didn't matter who was hitting ninth for the team. You could just pinch hit for him late in games, which is why we had what's his name? The guy who used to work at Whole Foods. Hayden Sanger, right?
Hayden Sanger.
That's his name. Yeah. Like, that's why you had him up. He was just a defensive replacement that I think had as many balls in play that I had fingers last year. So, like, we're at the point with this run prevention movement and strong up the middle where Alvarez is going to have to be better. You have like Brett Beatty playing the outfield. And look, Mark Vientos can make some plays here at first base. Rich, do you trust him at first base? Like, numbers be damned, to be like a productive first baseman for this team?
No, but
okay.
But that's because I don't trust Mark Vientos to really do anything at this point.
But that's what I'm trying to say. Like, people can put the numbers in front of me and they'll feel like I'm being gaslit. Like, look at what he is, DRS. And I'm sorry. I'm not there yet where I could be like, actually, he's a dependable first baseman, you know?
Yeah. I mean, they are, it's just like stupid thing to say, but like defensively, they are good where they are good. And then in other places, it's like infielders playing in places they probably shouldn't be playing. And I'm not going to get on Beatty for that play against Arizona earlier in the week. I think that ball had like an expected batting average of 450 on it. So it was going to be a tough play regardless, but he did not play it well. I do wonder if Benj might have had a better shot at making that play. Again, it would have been a very difficult play. It's not one you can expect him to make, but you know, does that make a difference in that game? Do things go differently? Who knows? Obviously we know the issues with Bichette, and first base is just like they play a new guy at first base every day now. Ronnie Mauricio is even getting some reps. So like, who the hell knows what the plan is at first base? And that was another question coming into this year too, of like, okay, Pete's gone, like the stalwart is gone. How are you going to replace that? And it's like, different guy every day. It has been a revolving door so far early this season.
Yeah. By the way, quick thought. So the reason to not use Luis Robert, one of their best hitters so far this year, was that it was a ninth inning only situation because we didn't have him in the field. Should we be questioning why they didn't pinch hit him for Jared Young in that's a first base spot? Never mind. I thought he DH'd. Never mind. It's Polanco that DH'd today. I ignore everything.
You could still make the argument and just do some switching after that.
Then Vientos takes the field for him. Yeah, that's fine. And if that's your one and done, that should have been your spot. Okay.
I could make that argument. I mean, we're going to talk about the manager more, so I'm going to save it. But like, there's some stuff that was some decisions that were made this weekend and this past week that I didn't love. And one of them was like, hey, we're going to put Robert and Alvarez on the bench in the same game when nobody else is hitting. Like, you could divvy up the days off differently to be a little bit more strategic. I sent you the screenshot of the lineup this morning. And I said, like, well, this is certainly a lineup that exists. It looked pretty rough, and I am not surprised that they scored 0 runs today just based on that alone.
real quick, because this actually is my transition to talking about the manager. Because the last thing is the bullpen, and I think it's a larger conversation. Like every bullpen that struggles, I think you can point to how they're being used, how overtaxed they are. Some of it's a cause of your starting rotation not giving you innings, which is why like I give them some grace last year for what the bullpen was or became because of what their starting pitching was. But look, I think this will be the first conversation we have here on this pod, Rich, about the state of the manager. And we just went through 10 annoying things. I don't know how much of those 10 annoying things I actually blame him for, or what percentage of those annoying things I blame him for. I do think as we look at the past week, like you point out the lineup that was on the field today, and as the commenter just James Buckley said, like you could have had like Terren's catch yesterday in the Grimace jerseys, right? And then you have Alvarez play today with Peralta on the mound, and then you sit Robert Jr. Like you split up their off days, and there's just not not enough foresight there. It seemed in the ability to sit two of your best hitters. Like, am I surprised that this lineup scored 0 runs? No. I also don't think it's because they sat Robert and Alvarez, because like you said, there's 7 other hitters in the lineup that could have scored runs too. But I do think, and this is just, I'll throw this over to you. Like how bad does it have to get before Mendy's job really, Carlos Mendoza's job really becomes like a question, and we may be headed toward, look, the last time the Mets had a collapse like that was 2007. They fired their manager almost 65 games into the season the following year with Willie Randolph.
Right.
At what point does it have to reach this year for them to do something similar?
Look, it's not good that we're asking this question on April 12th. I'll say that. That being said, and apparently we can do polls now, supposedly, with our StreamYard. So I'm going to test that out while we talk about this and see if people want to interact in the chat. Oh, there it is. Cool. So we put it in the chat for those watching live on YouTube. Should Carlos Mendoza be fired this year? Yes, no, or too soon to say. Type 1, 2, or 3 in the chat to respond to it. This is the first time we're doing this, so I have no idea how it's going to work.
Also, erase we should erase the this year. Should he be fired? Like, has he already done a job? Because I think at some point it might become clear that you have to make that move. And even us will have to say that, right? So should he be fired? Is it too soon to say? Yes, I think so. That would be my answer.
Yeah.
We could be a week away from that being a yes, Rich.
Man, I had some people on Twitter, I think after Saturday's loss, starting to bring it up for the first time, I think, this year. And my opinion then, when I was responding to some people, and I'm going to stay with it, is like, I don't think we can really talk about it seriously until at least June. That feels like the earliest point of like firing a manager. But I guess there are scenarios where it gets so bad so fast that can get moved up. If this team's 10 games under 500 the way that they started in 2024, and we're a week or two into May, and that's the case, I could very much see that being a scenario where they just are like, okay, Carlos Mendoza is gone and Kai Correa is going to be the interim manager for the rest of the season. I really hope it doesn't get to that point. Obviously, I hope we are not living this kind of like redux of the 2007 into 2008 season. Didn't love that the first time we did it. Really don't want to see the encore of that. And obviously the big difference between these 2 years and those 2 years was they kept that core intact, and this time they broke it up. So I'm hoping that pays some kind of dividends at some point. But early returns have been quite bad. Yeah, I think it's too early, but like I said, it's not a good sign that we're already asking the question, and we're barely into this season.
So Pete in the chat, I don't blame Mendoza. This is 1,000% on Stearns. Just to whether or not it's too soon or not, this will be why he gets as long a rope as possible. Because the moment a managerial change is made, it becomes on the president of baseball operations. It becomes on David Stearns for this turnaround to exist, because then he gets to hire a second manager. This team is now built in his image, right? That's why I think Mendy will get as long a rope as possible. However, I think we're gonna go out of order and go to the weekly predictions now. I think that's where we should go right now. So the Mets play 3 in LA against the Dodgers, who have the best record in baseball. And then they have 3 against the Cubs, who I think have also gotten off to a similarly slow start, behind the Pirates in the standings with the second best record in baseball at 9-5 or 9-6. They lost today. The Cubs are 7-8. So these are two teams that have gotten off to struggling starts to their season. Rich, you won the week because you said 3-3 and the Mets went 1-5.
Unfortunately, I won the week.
So those 6 games, 3 in LA, 3 in Chicago. What is your prediction for this week?
Unfortunately, I'm going to go with 2-4. It's just hard to have a lot of confidence right now. And the fact that, I know the Dodgers are like starting to look the tiniest bit more human right now. So like maybe they catch them at a good time. But you're going into LA to play by far the best team in baseball with no Juan Soto. Odds are pretty high that they might not win any games there. And yeah, it seems like they always kind of have trouble at Wrigley Field in the regular season too. So I'm going to go with 2-4. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope they can get things back on track and we don't have to keep talking about firing the manager and Panic City and all that stuff.
Well, so I'll go 3-3 just to go as
the wise play.
Not as far the other way as possible, but just because if I'm predicting 1-5, I think the line that we're gonna have to create is what you said: 2-4. If they're worse than that this week, and God forbid we're looking at an 11-game losing streak, Rich.
Oh God.
The answer is gonna be yes. Like, you're talking about a 7-15 start to a season with expectations, with what their payroll is, with what happened this offseason, where they stripped down literally everything except really 3 things that are significant. It's Juan Soto, it's Francisco Lindor, and it's the manager. The only holdover on the coaching staff is the manager. It's going to have to fall on him. It might not even be his fault. But at a certain point, you try something new, especially if the clubhouse is not performing for said manager. It then immediately becomes on the president. But it's why they have to go 2-4 at least, Rich, because I do think some jobs will be on the line if we're looking at a week that is as bad. Because 11-game losing streak, losing 10 out of 11, it's going to get late pretty early for this manager and his prospects of still being the manager of this baseball team.
Yeah. I don't disagree with anything you said.
So do we start with El Stinko since there are more candidates? So no, let's do the right order. You get to go first for curtain call. You get to go first. It's because you won the week, right?
Yes.
So we're going to give out a curtain call for this week. Don't really know who should get it. So I'm going to let you go first on the curtain call. We give out a curtain call to somebody that performed well this week, so well that we want them to come out and tip their hat to the crowd. Go ahead, Rich. Dealer's choice.
Yeah, I mean, I hope for our sake that this is the smallest list we ever have for the curtain call possibilities, because truly we're really scraping the bottom of the barrel with this week. Honestly, I thought about giving a cheeky answer, saying the fans deserve it because they had to watch all that bullshit, but I'll give a real answer in the spirit of the segment. And I'm going to go with Sean Manaea. This is a guy that we gave a lot of heat to and we're quite worried about coming into the year. And he pitched really well into performances this week, specifically on Sunday. He throws 3 shutout innings, had 4 strikeouts. He also pitched 4 solid innings in a blowout loss against the Diamondbacks earlier in the week. So he gives up 2 runs in 7 innings. He really saved the Mets bullpen twice this week. And there were not a lot of other contributors. I put it out on Twitter. We were texting about it today, but like the fact that he has the arm slot that he has and that he is a left-handed pitcher makes me believe that he can still be effective and get outs. If this was like a right-hander who had like a normal delivery and his velocity dropped from 95 to 89, I think that's the kind of guy that quickly falls out of baseball. But he already relies a lot on deception, and lefties can get guys out in very different ways. So I do think that there is a path to Manaea still being effective in some way for this team, even if it's right now in these like long bulk relief outings. Although if Peterson and Senga have more blow-up starts, he could very well be making starts again at some point soon. So I'm going to give it to Manaea. He pitched well. I think surpassed expectations. And again, not a lot of choices either.
In a week filled with almost 0 silver linings, the one silver lining you can point to is Sean Manaea's relief appearance on Sunday. And look, we'll see how the rest of the rotation goes with Senga and Peterson. Maybe in the rotation before we know it.
Right.
But we'll see what happens with Manaea. I love that you put on the rundown on the Google Doc. Fans for having to watch this shit is a candidate. And look, I should I give it to me for going on Tuesday, like being one of the fans.
You saw the lone win.
I did see the lone win this week. I will give it to Francisco Alvarez, who is off to a great start. I put it out there when we were going over the Claudio Casino over-unders that like there is a world where he gets into the all-star catcher conversation. 4 home runs through 16 games, I believe, is like a 35 home run pace. Maybe even more than that at this point, but I don't even need him to hit that. I just need him, like if he hits 30 this year and plays like 25% better defense, then I think you're looking at, an all-star catcher that we can feel good about from this season. The home run that he hit yesterday put a 7-4 deficit into 7-3, or maybe it was vice versa. It was 7-3 into 7-4 rather than 7-4 into 7-5. That's right. He's off to a great start offensively. The other candidate, we should just say, Ronnie Mauricio. I like that he had the walk-off hit on Tuesday. I don't like that we're back to you play once a week. Like, just what are we doing with this player? Like, not giving him at bats very clearly. So he's either going to play or figure out something else to do with him, Ronnie Mauricio.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about the young infielder, third baseman thing earlier with Vientos and Beatty. Like, I'm at the point where I'd throw Mauricio into that as well. Of like, I think the Mets just kind of went over with those 4 guys. If you want to include Luis Angel Acuna, who's now with the White Sox, we always kind of talked about like who are the 2 guys out of that group that are going to hit, and I know it kind of feels like they might have gone 0 for 4 there. Maybe they get 1, but I don't think any of those players is going to wind up hitting the ceiling that we were ever hoping for.
Loaded category. El Stinko. Players or performances from the past week that were so bad that they get a big fat El Stinko from both of us and Keith Hernandez.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who do I want to go with on this?
It's a long list this week.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'd hate to give it to Lindor 2 straight weeks in a row, but it would be warranted for him to do that. I got to be honest, I don't have as much smoke for the manager when a team is as offensively ice cold. There's just not a lot of right buttons to push, even if he might be pushing some wrong ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go, look, for me personally, the pitching's always going to be the thing that bothers me the most. And because this is now a second consecutive start that he's blown up, and really like the dependable thing you had for most of last season until it wasn't, was David Peterson. Right. And him falling off a cliff at the end of August into September, really from that Brave start, the day after Pete Alonso broke the Mets record, like they could have gotten on a roll, and then they win the game that Pete breaks the home run record, and then they're up 6-0, Then he just blows the game the next day, and then is not an effective pitcher the rest of the season. Not off to a great start in your contract year, David Peterson. I'm beginning to wonder how much longer you're a New York Met. That is the dark thought I have about David Peterson. I hope I'm wrong. Hope we're looking at this a month from now and he just had like a solid 4 straight starts. But it's getting a bit it's getting a bit unfortunate for him and his tenure that it might just end with a whimper and a DFA. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Feels like it might be getting, I don't know if they'll DFA him, but feels like it's getting late early there. I could see there being some kind of trade when we get to that point.
Too valuable to just DFA him. You're right. Because the point is like where he's just remember the Oliver Perez last year where he was just in the bullpen and never pitched? Like that's more, I think, where this could be headed if he's not effective. And look, maybe he just finds a path as a reliever like Minaya has. It's very discouraging watching David Peterson pitch right now.
You know how bad things have to be in April for Willie Randolph and Oliver Perez comparisons to be made?
Again, those teams had stinks, and they had to make some drastic changes to try and get rid of them.
Those teams had stinks. This team has stink. We're talking about El Stinko. I almost named this episode the El Stinkowski or the Big Stinkowski in honor of the Big Lebowski.
There you go.
We went with something else, I think. Man, I have a long list of guys that this could be. And I definitely think Lindor is a candidate. I see like the live chat. A lot of people want it to be Lindor. Like, it didn't have a good week with all the stuff we talked about earlier with getting thrown out of third, got caught stealing, didn't cover second base, still doesn't have an RBI, not hitting extra base hits. He did hit 259 this week. Again, it was mostly all singles and a lot of mental errors, but there are so many other really bad guys from this past week that I can't in good conscience give it to Lindor when we have a lot of these other guys. I'm split between two people right now, and I'm gonna force myself to make a decision. I went into this not having decided and hoping that you would make it easier on me, and even though you picked Peterson, it didn't really help me at all.
I'll just say this, just as you're still considering options, I don't think giving Lindor a second straight El Stinko is a bad thing or unwarranted. So if you wanted to, I'll take this week was warranted for 2, and I'll make him also my El Stinko. You know,
we have to force ourselves to stick to the format.
All right, go ahead.
It means nothing.
Then where are you going with this?
Okay. Honorable mention, Luke Weaver. He blew 2 games this week, but I got to go with a guy who literally went 0 for the week. And the fact that this guy last week was a curtain call and is now an El Stinko is not an ideal situation. And that's Mark Vientos, who went 0 for 17 since we declared him maybe better of an option than Pete Alonso last week.
I didn't declare anything. I surmised.
I'm saying that facetiously.
Yes. Until we proclaimed that the king has returned. Yes, indeed.
But yeah, I mean, he got our hopes up. It was like, oh man, maybe he is this like secret X factor that we weren't expecting, and he hits 20, 25 home runs, and he's this big contributor. And then I was like, oh right, all the other seasons of his career have happened, and he's probably just not that good. And yeah, Mark Vientos, you know, we talk about Peterson not being long for this team. I don't know how many more lives Mark Vientos has at this point, but I gotta think he's down to his last few left. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say. He went 0 for 17. He literally did not get a hit in the entire week. Didn't really come close. Came up in a huge opportunity on Sunday in the finale where a single or a ball up the alley makes a huge difference. They probably win the baseball game, and lazy fly out to right field against the lefty, and that was kind of all she wrote. Mets didn't really have any scoring opportunities after that. So Mark Vientos, from the penthouse to the dumpster in a week. You are my El Stinko, my friend. Stinky V.
Stinky V. That's good. We didn't say the name Bo Bichette really in this a
He did.
fine week. Like, didn't really have a great week. Didn't have a bad week. Hit his first home run. Like,
Okay, yeah,
yeah. I texted
whatever.
someone as I'm starting to plan Raptors content for Nick's Film School. Like, I texted someone in Toronto about, like, did Bo Bichette struggle with high fastballs? Like, did he have a hole in his swing in Toronto? And they're like, not really. And it's like, well, he's getting a steady diet of high
He does
fastballs out of
now.
the zone here in New York. I'm not worried. I'm just wondering if this is like a thing. I also apparently just never pulls the ball. Got it. So he just every hit's to up the middle or right field.
Honestly,
Good to know. Okay, we got some comments in the chat. I starred, so I want to get to.
Okay.
First one from Pete. From Pete. Shouldn't the players be mostly accountable too? And talking about if you fire the manager, it immediately becomes on the president, on David Stearns, especially
Right.
Lindor, Simeon, team defense. That's implied in saying it's now on David Stearns. He put the players, this roster together. So if the players don't perform, yes, it's on them. It's the guy that tore the roster down from the previous iteration to give us these players. That's what I mean by that. Of course, the players are accountable. And it's why, like, we opened the show talking about how concerning it is that their leader, Francisco Lindor, that stat that Gary said, that SNY said during the broadcast, that in wins, Lindor has like a 900 OPS. In losses, his OPS is under 600. They just, that is an alarming thought that it's just that dependent on one player's performance. Unfortunately, it's as he goes, so do the Mets, apparently.
Yeah. And the other thing, again, not Pete is 100% right, but the owner and the president of baseball operations can't fire the players. And they already just jettisoned everybody in the offseason. So the next scapegoat will be who's left, and that's the manager at this point, because David Stern's not going to fire himself.
Right.
So, yeah, it's unfortunate for Mendoza, but at the same time, when what happened last year happened, honestly, you could even point back to 2024 of like, they got off to a really bad start that year as well, and kind of had a lightning in a bottle type moment with Grimace and OMG and all that stuff, which, you know, Jose Iglesias wasn't even supposed to be on that team. They got fortunate, I suppose. And now this year, this team just doesn't look prepared to play a lot of the times. They're making a lot of stupid, boneheaded mistakes in addition to just not hitting at all. You know, you're the leader of the ship, the captain of the ship. You know, you do bear the responsibility for that, whether it should be all of it or not. You know, that's a different discussion, but he's certainly not blameless either.
I'm gonna go to Kaiser Soze here. I didn't know run prevention meant the Mets offense. That's funny. I gotta read this fully. I didn't know Stern's run prevention strategy meant the Mets offense, that he wanted the Mets offense to prevent runs. Well, if that's the way we're looking at it, it's working.
A great job.
Yeah, you fixed it. You prevented the Mets from scoring so many runs, David Stearns.
Yeah, scored 13 runs in 6 games this week. Very cool.
Another one from James Buckley. Thank you for your contributions today, James, and everybody else watching live in the chat. So he brings up that Jack Wendinger has the best stats in Syracuse, a 1.00 ERA. I did start to look at the minors a little bit. Nick Morabito and AJ Ewing have just gotten off to great starts. Ewing at AA, Morabito at AAA. And look, yep. I was kind of looking at outfield options. MJ Melendez hitting under 200 to start his AAA season in Syracuse. Yeah, the pitching. Ryan Lambert's got like an ERA in the 3s, I think. Ryan Clifford's hitting like 215. Not a lot of power to start this season as well. I did have another, like, talk about dark thoughts, Rich. Like, does Elian Pena have to just kind of march his way through the minors? Like, he's at St. Lucie with a 1,400 OPS. Right. You're right. He's 18. Like, does an 18-year-old eventually become the savior? And it's just Jose Reyes all over again. I don't think this is real, obviously, but
we're in a rough spot for this early on, that we're talking about everything we already talked
Right,
about with
right.
Oliver Perez and firing the manager, and now the 18-year-old savior in single
Uh-huh.
A, like, oh boy, like
Right.
this is not how we thought this season was gonna start.
And look, Jonah Tong did have a good last start. He had a rough start his previous one, but Jonah Tong's last start was pretty good.
It was, although
James
I
is
am,
mostly responding to the thought of if Peterson and Senga don't turn it around, what are the options to replace them in the rotation?
yeah.
So
I mean, Christian Scott may be ready sooner than we thought.
yeah,
He's been pretty solid down there as well, and obviously has, albeit brief, major league experience. Still think Tong is. What worries me still is he's still very reliant on that fastball. That hasn't, his arsenal, even though he's added a bunch of pitches, has not changed too much. In his most recent start, he kind of went back to throwing the fastball a majority of the time, and he's going to need to rely on those new secondary pitches to get out to the big league level. So until he is, learns how to do that and adapts, I don't think he's a real option right now. And I don't think they're in a situation where they need to do that either, but something to keep an eye on going forward.
So I have a buddy who is very heavy into prospects. Like he pays attention to the Mets minors. Like the Mets minor league app or the MLB, the MILB app is higher up the totem pole than the MLB app for him. Just every day I get an update about how these minor leaguers are doing, right? And it's been a running joke for years that your obsession with prospects and like prospect podcasts and whatnot is ridiculous to where like tell me how they did in high school, like tell me their junior high numbers, like go that extensive with it.
Did they take to prom?
Right, like go full details with it. We'll watch Major League Baseball, right? And I'm mostly teasing him. And what it has become is any prospect update he gives me, it's like, oh, the Padres are gonna love him, right? Like I tease him about the Mason Miller trade that I've been wanting since the offseason. And
price going up.
Listen, I might take all the prospects that he sets me at this point with Mason Miller not throwing, like nobody's getting the ball in play on Mason Miller.
He's more strikeouts than balls thrown this season.
He's struck out more players than he has thrown the ball out of the strike zone yet this year. It's ridiculous. Yes. That being said, he pushed back at me finally, I think yesterday when he shared the Elian Pena home run, and I was like, man, Padres really got one in him, And he was like, you're no fun. And it's like, yeah, I watch Major League Baseball. And he's like, yeah, because that's fun. And it actually paused me in the moment to be like, you know what? It would be great to watch baseball with no bearing emotionally on the results of the actual game, because we could find silver linings in like a player performing on the Mets, like Manaea having a day today. At the end of the day, did the Mets win or lose is the number one question we're always going to ask. And it's going to determine, what the Mets therapy recap sounds like. And it's why, like, this season better not become, hey, look at the future, look at the farm system, because of how much money is invested. But yeah, I actually don't blame anybody that's looking for anything else, because this just was not a fun week of Mets baseball. And if it's the minors, great. I went to the movies yesterday during the first 3 innings of the Mets game. The Knicks are about to make a playoff run. Rich got drunk. I just protect your happiness, Mets fans, because we're about to go watch some 10 o'clock baseball games here on the East Coast. And who knows what happens in LA at this point.
And just again, speaking to what you just said about the expectations and like, man, this better not turn into a kind of season where we're just looking at prospect stats from the minor leagues. This cannot and better not turn into a repeat of the 2023 season, where that team obviously was coming off a really good year with a bad ending, had a ton of expectations. They lost Jacob deGrom, like not so dissimilar to kind of what has happened this year, where they lost a lot of homegrown guys, mostly by choice. And that team was completely out of it by May and June had really no sauce or hype or excitement around them at all, and sold most of that team for parts by the deadline. They had a lot of guys on expiring contracts, a lot of older players, not so dissimilar to what they have right now. Of like Jorge Polanco is only under contract for 2 years. He's older. Bo Bichette, it's really just a 1-year contract. Looking at the rotation with Senga and Peterson on expiring deals, even Clay Holmes is on expiring contract. They could wind up in a situation where they have to blow this team up for parts, and they cannot find themselves in that situation. People will lose their jobs, and this fan base will be, you think people are freaking out now, this fan base will be in a complete revolt. And you better not bring up fans not showing up to the ballpark at that point, because my God, it's early. They're 2 games under 500. We have seen them get off to much worse starts than this and rebound. There's plenty of time to do that, but you cannot dig yourselves in a hole that you are unable to come out of. You cannot get off to the start you did in 2024. And like I said, you cannot repeat what happened in 2023. Like, they will not be acceptable, and there will be massive ramifications moving forward if that happens.
Actually, that's a great place to end. I was going to put up a comment from someone who annoys us, but I'd rather not, because it's a great way for this pod to end. Rich MacLeod. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this extended therapy session of the Just Mets podcast. If you dug it, please like this video. Remember to subscribe if you're listening to the podcast feed. Leave a 5-star rating and a review, Apple or on Spotify. Social clips throughout the week. We'll see what Rich cooks up at some point over the last week. And you're doing a midweek pod. They're off on Thursdays, so whenever you'd like to do a midweek pod, I guess.
And I will be doing it from Los Angeles, where I will be for work all week. I'm going to attempt to get to one of the Met Dodger games, but I will be on a shoot, so I don't know if I'll be able to get away for that. But I will be recording a show from my hotel room at some point. It may not be live because of the time difference, and by the time that game ends, it might be like 1:00 in the morning on the East Coast, so I might just be talking to myself. So we'll play that by ear, but I will be putting out another midweek show at some point this week.
There you go. He is Rich. I am Andrew, according to one commenter who needs to go away. And until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Let's go Mets. And in the words of the immortal Gary Cohen, we are out of here.